In the year 2021, detectives in Salt Lake City, Utah, stumbled across something deeply unsettling. While going through a suspect's phone, they uncovered a short video clip. At first glance, it looked harmless, even playful. Two young people joking around, giggling, recording themselves as teenagers often do. But then the realization hit. What they were saying in that video was chilling beyond words. It wasn't just a random teenage prank. It was a confession, one of the most disturbing ever caught on camera. And the story behind that video would unravel into one of the most shocking and heartbreaking family tragedies in recent American history. To truly understand how events spiraled so far out of control, we need to go back decades to the roots of the family involved, to a man named Daniel Halseth, whose life began with promise, warmth, and ambition, but ended in violence at the hands of someone he trusted most. Daniel Halseth was born on January 28, 1976, in Estacada, Oregon, a small, rural town about 30 miles southeast of Portland. Estacada was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by name, where weekends were filled with community events, and where life followed the rhythm of the seasons. Daniel's family owned a modest farm, and from the time he could walk, he was out there in the fields helping with chores. Early mornings meant feeding animals, carrying heavy buckets of water, or picking vegetables until his hands were raw. While other kids might have resented the work, Daniel seemed to thrive on it. Those long days instilled in him two qualities that would define his character for life: an unshakable work ethic and a deep appreciation for the bonds of family. His parents often described him as their sunbeam. He had an energy that lit up every room. By the time he entered high school, Daniel had grown into the kind of teenager people naturally gravitated toward. He was tall, athletic, with an easy smile that seemed to invite trust. Teachers adored him. Friends relied on him. And girls noticed him. But Daniel wasn't just a popular kid. He was also gifted, seemingly good at anything he tried. He picked up the drums one year and was playing complex rhythms like a seasoned musician by the next. He sat down at a piano and quickly taught himself to play. His classmates affectionately dubbed him Drummer Dan. Alongside his musical talents, he excelled in technology. Computers fascinated him. At a time when most people were still struggling to understand dial-up internet, Daniel was already building systems, taking machines apart and putting them back together, solving problems that baffled adults twice his age. By all accounts, Daniel looked like the kind of young man destined for success. But in 1994, tragedy struck. Daniel was in his junior year of high school when his father, the man who had been his role model, mentor, and guiding hand, suddenly collapsed from a brain aneurysm. He never recovered. For Daniel, the loss was devastating. His father had been his anchor, the one he leaned on for advice, encouragement, and strength. Now, at just 18, Daniel was thrust into adulthood with a wound that would never fully heal. Still, he pressed forward. It was in his nature. His family rallied around one another, each member shouldering the grief, and Daniel graduated in 1995. From there, he moved to Salem, Oregon, to pursue higher education. At college, Daniel majored in music, earning his bachelor's degree. But he wasn't content to stop there. He stayed in Salem to pursue a master's degree in business. Those years weren't easy, long nights of studying, balancing work and classes, but Daniel's resilience shone through. And during that time, he met someone who would change the course of his life forever. A young woman named Elizabeth. Elizabeth had grown up in Salem as well. Like Daniel, she was intelligent, ambitious, and naturally talented. She had even worked as a model, turning heads with her striking looks. When the two began dating, friends often remarked that they looked like a Hollywood couple, picture perfect, with bright futures ahead. In 2001, shortly after Daniel completed his master's degree, the two were married. By 2006, they were parents to 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. Their lives seemed to fall neatly into place. Daniel, leveraging his tech skills, founded an IT company specializing in computer systems. His business began to thrive, particularly after the family relocated to Las Vegas, Nevada, where opportunities were plentiful. Elizabeth, meanwhile, had her own ambitions. She had always dreamed of entering politics. In 2010, she decided to run for a Nevada State Senate seat. The campaign required grueling hours, endless travel, and constant appearances. But Daniel, ever supportive, stepped up. He became the primary caretaker of their 3 children, juggling the demands of fatherhood with the responsibility of keeping his business afloat. He'd put the kids to bed, then stay up late into the night working at the dining room table, his laptop glowing as he pored over client files. That sacrifice paid off. In November 2010, Elizabeth won her election. At just 27, she became the youngest woman ever elected to Nevada's legislature. To the outside world, the Halseth family was the epitome of success. A bright, ambitious couple with 3 beautiful children, a thriving business, and a budding political career. But behind the smiles and polished image, cracks were beginning to form. Shortly after Elizabeth took office, Daniel began noticing changes. She was spending increasing amounts of time with a man named Tiger Halseth, a former golf pro turned political rising star. At first, Daniel brushed off his concerns. Politics demanded networking, long hours, constant communication. But the late-night texts and calls became impossible to ignore. Finally, Daniel confronted Tiger directly. He pleaded with him to stop contacting his wife, to respect his family. But the communication continued. Then, in October 2011, Daniel learned that Elizabeth and Tiger had taken an extended trip together. The evidence was undeniable. His wife was having an affair. When she returned home, Daniel confronted her in their bedroom. The argument was loud, angry, and filled with accusations. He shouted, she denied, emotions boiled over. But according to both of them, when Elizabeth told him to stop, Daniel stopped. He walked away. Over the following days, the couple sought counseling at their church. It seemed there was still a chance to repair the damage. But Elizabeth had already made up her mind. On October 21, 2011, just 5 days after the fight, she went to the police and accused Daniel of inappropriate touching during their argument. The accusation shocked him. Police arrested him on a charge of open and gross lewdness, essentially unwanted touching. The charge was notoriously easy to claim, often based on one person's word against another's, without physical evidence. Still, Daniel was convicted. He was placed on probation, ordered to attend anger management, and most devastatingly, forced to register as a sex offender. It was a label that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Shortly after his conviction, Daniel filed for divorce. What followed was a bitter, drawn-out battle over custody of the children. Elizabeth's affair with Tiger was now an open secret, splashed across headlines. Her campaign had been built on family values, morality, and wholesomeness. Now, the scandal was impossible to contain. By February 2012, she resigned from the Nevada Senate. The divorce was finalized later that year. Despite Daniel's years of being the primary caregiver, his new legal status as a registered sex offender weighed heavily against him. Elizabeth was granted full custody of the children. Then, in a move that devastated Daniel, she packed up the kids and relocated to Alaska, to live with Tiger, the man she had once denied being involved with. She soon married him. For Daniel, it was as if his entire world had collapsed. The life he'd worked so hard to build was gone. His marriage, his reputation, his children. But, just as he had done after his father's death, Daniel refused to give up. Daniel threw himself into his computer business. He worked tirelessly, trying to find stability. He cherished every opportunity he could get to see his kids, though visits were strained and infrequent. Eventually, he found love again. He married a woman named Bogdana. For a time, things looked brighter. His family believed he was beginning to heal. On social media, Daniel shared daily posts filled with optimism and encouragement. He posted videos of himself laughing with his kids, emphasizing how much they meant to him. But in 2019, that second marriage crumbled as well. Once again, Daniel was left alone. Friends noticed that while his posts remained positive, his eyes often betrayed a deep sadness. Still, life had one more twist in store for him. In late 2020, Elizabeth returned to Nevada with the children. Though she and Daniel did not reconcile, this meant he could finally see his kids more often. For him, it was a gift. His youngest daughter, Sierra, was 16 at the time. By that year's end, she had essentially moved in with Daniel, despite legal custody belonging to her mother. Elizabeth was furious, but Sierra insisted she wanted to stay with her dad. Daniel filed to modify custody, telling the court that Elizabeth's home was toxic and harmful. He claimed Sierra was struggling with mental health issues and needed therapy, which he had already arranged. Elizabeth countered by saying Daniel was lying, that he was unfit, and that the letter he presented from Sierra supporting his custody case wasn't authentic. Court sessions grew heated. At one point, the judge scolded both parents, warning them that their inability to cooperate was harming their children. Eventually, in early 2021, the judge ordered Sierra back to Elizabeth's home. But Sierra wasn't willing to stay there. She snuck out and returned to Daniel. He welcomed her with open arms, grateful for every moment with his little angel. What Daniel couldn't have known was that this decision, fighting for his daughter's well-being, would set in motion the darkest chapter of his life. It was early April 2021 when Daniel's family began to sense that something wasn't right. Normally, Daniel was active online. He posted inspirational quotes, photos of his kids, videos of himself drumming or laughing at little moments in life. His phone was rarely silent, whether it was work clients, friends checking in, or relatives sharing updates. But suddenly, Daniel went quiet. His sister, who lived in Oregon, noticed first. Text messages went unanswered. Phone calls rang endlessly without reply. At first, she thought maybe he was busy. But then, strange things began happening. Daniel's bank accounts showed unusual withdrawals, thousands of dollars vanishing in rapid succession. His credit card was used in multiple states. When relatives tried to reach him again, they received odd text responses, filled with spelling errors and phrases Daniel never used. One text, supposedly from Daniel, claimed he was going away on a trip, that he needed some space. But those who knew him best were immediately suspicious. The words didn't sound like Daniel. His texts were always warm, thoughtful, punctuated with his characteristic humor. These were cold, mechanical, like someone trying to imitate his voice. Alarm bells rang. Family members called local authorities in Las Vegas and requested a welfare check. On April 9, 2021, officers with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department arrived at Daniel's home. From the outside, everything looked normal. But as they approached the door, they noticed a faint, acrid smell, something unmistakable. Burnt. Metallic. Wrong. The officers knocked. No answer. They knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Finally, they forced their way inside. The moment the door swung open, smoke and a foul stench poured out. The interior of the home was charred, blackened from fire. Moving cautiously, flashlights cutting through the haze, they followed the smell deeper into the house. What they found in the garage would stay with them forever. Inside, they discovered a body, burned almost beyond recognition, but still identifiable. It was Daniel. He had been stabbed repeatedly, then set on fire in an attempt to destroy evidence. The brutality of the attack shocked even seasoned detectives. Whoever had done this hadn't just wanted Daniel dead. They wanted him erased. Detectives immediately launched an investigation. The house was combed for evidence. Security footage from the neighborhood was collected, and the search for Daniel's missing vehicle began. At the same time, police traced the suspicious bank withdrawals and credit card charges. They led to gas stations, fast food restaurants, and retail stores scattered across several states. Surveillance cameras captured the people making those transactions. They weren't strangers. They weren't masked figures or hardened criminals. They were teenagers, and one of them was Daniel's own daughter, Sierra. Sierra Halseth was just 16 years old. By many accounts, she had always been bright, artistic, and spirited. But she was also rebellious. Friends described her as restless, often clashing with her mother and drifting toward independence far sooner than her peers. In 2020, she had started dating a boy named Aaron Guerrero, who was 18. The relationship quickly became intense, too intense. Elizabeth, Sierra's mother, disapproved strongly. The two teens seemed consumed by each other, isolating from friends and family, making plans that felt reckless and impulsive. At one point, Elizabeth even forbade Sierra from seeing Aaron. But, as many parents know, telling a teenager no can often drive them further toward defiance. What no one realized was just how far Sierra and Aaron were willing to go to stay together. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered what would become the most haunting piece of evidence in the case: a video recorded on Aaron's phone. In the clip, Sierra and Aaron sit together side by side. Their faces are lit by a dim, grainy glow. At first, they laugh, whispering to each other like any teenage couple might. But then, Aaron says something that makes the blood run cold. "Welcome back to our channel," he jokes, as if starting a YouTube vlog. Day 3 after murdering somebody. Sierra giggles. She leans closer to him. "Whoa, don't put that on camera," she whispers. But Aaron continues, smiling. It was worth it. The two laugh again, as if they were sharing a secret too wild, too unbelievable. But it wasn't a joke. They were talking about Daniel. Detectives pieced together what happened in Daniel's home. On April 8th, Sierra and Aaron went to Daniel's house. They had brought with them knives, lighter fluid, and a plan. At some point during the evening, they attacked Daniel. The details are almost too horrific to recount. He was stabbed multiple times. The fight was brutal, chaotic. Daniel, strong and determined, fought desperately for his life. But against two attackers, he didn't stand a chance. Once he was dead, they dragged his body into the garage. They poured lighter fluid over him and set him on fire, hoping the flames would erase their crime. Then, astonishingly, they stayed in the house. For hours. Ordering food. Making videos. Acting as though nothing had happened. Finally, they took Daniel's car, his credit cards, and fled. For days, Sierra and Aaron drove across multiple states. Surveillance cameras captured them at ATMs, withdrawing cash. At gas stations, filling the tank with stolen money. At stores, buying supplies. To outsiders, they might have looked like a young couple on a road trip. But behind that image was a trail of fraud, theft, and murder. Eventually, their luck ran out. In Salt Lake City, Utah, police spotted Daniel's stolen vehicle. Inside, they found Sierra and Aaron. Both were arrested without incident. When their phones were searched, detectives found the videos, the giggles, the joking confessions, the laughter about killing Daniel. It was irrefutable. News of Daniel's murder spread quickly. Friends and family were devastated, not only by the brutality of the crime, but by the fact that his own daughter had taken part. At his memorial, relatives described Daniel as a loving father, a man who always put his children first, even when life had stripped so much away from him. They remembered his laughter, his music, his unwavering optimism despite hardship. The question everyone asked was why? Why would Sierra turn on the father who had fought so hard to keep her safe? Psychologists weighed in. Some pointed to the intensity of her relationship with Aaron, how teenage love can feel overwhelming, blinding, even destructive. Others noted the years of family turmoil, the divorce, the custody battles, the constant conflict between her parents. Perhaps Sierra saw her father as an obstacle to her independence, to her romance with Aaron. Whatever the reason, it didn't excuse the horror of what happened. Both Sierra and Aaron were charged with murder, arson, robbery, and conspiracy. Because of their ages, Sierra's case drew particular attention. At 16, she was still legally a minor. But the brutality of the crime demanded serious consequences. Eventually, both pleaded guilty. Aaron received life in prison with the possibility of parole after 22 years. Sierra, also sentenced to life, would be eligible for parole after 16 years. For Daniel's family, there was little comfort. Justice had been served, but nothing could erase the pain. Looking back on Daniel Halseth's life is heartbreaking. Here was a man who had survived the loss of his father at a young age, who had built a career, supported his wife's political dreams, raised 3 children, and worked tirelessly to give them everything he could. His downfall came not from enemies, not from strangers, but from those closest to him. From betrayal. From lies. And, ultimately, from the unthinkable actions of his own daughter. Yet those who knew Daniel insist that one fact remains true. He loved his children. Fiercely. Unconditionally. To the very end. And so, the story of Daniel Halseth stands as a grim reminder of how fragile life can be, how love and trust can be twisted into something unimaginable, and how darkness can sometimes emerge from the very places we least expect. If this story gripped you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who follow true crime. It helps us continue to bring you stories that explore the darkest corners of human nature, and ensures you won't miss our next investigation. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.